people who are thinking that Hawaii, they can come here and just, flaunt themselves going out and breaking the quarantine. That's not the way it's going to work over here.
A self-professed cult leader who once planned to settle down in Hawaii with his followers is heading back to the mainland along with 20 others from his group. It's Hawaii's largest single case of quarantine violators. Today, their leader agreed to a plea deal.
After initially telling authorities they wanted to fight the charges and live in Hawaii, they apparently changed their minds after a slew of online racist comments.
Carbonation leader Eligio Bishop pleaded no contest and was sentenced to 90 days in jail. But that sentence was suspended since he agreed to leave the islands.
Yo, hey, let me talk. Facts. It came out your mouth wrong, right?
Yes.
So let's go down to the statue where my king and my people will meet up, and let's talk to your people at the statue downtown Hilo right now. I'll tell you right now, the whole island will show up to talk to you. If you want to talk man to man, let's go to the statue where the king and the power to our people is. Let's go bring my people to meet your people, bro. Facts. 100. You come to our island. We didn't go to your island. We didn't start shit at your place where you fucking sleep. Did we? Did we? Did we go to your place?
No.
Did we? Exactly. And we ain't defending ourselves for something we did not do nothing wrong.
I didn't say you did nothing wrong.
You defending yourself for something you did wrong. You did wrong. You're not in quarantine. You're breaking the law on that. All your fucking friends that are coming over here, you breaking the law because you're not buying the quarantine. You think you're better than the law?
I'm not.
Black Lives Matter, but you breaking the law.
All right, relax, dude.
Black Lives Matter, but you breaking the law, bitch.
Right.
Facts, right? Facts, right?
Listen.
Facts, right? Let the man preach, because I'm preaching. No, you listen. Nigga, I can say nigga because this is Hawaii. This is my rock. We are niggas ourselves. We were enslaved like the nigga you are. We were sold by our own people to white people, from our own people, from fucking fakes, phonies that we let into our community, like you, and people like you sold us. That's right. I'm a pure Hawaiian. I'm not just a Hawaiian. I'm a Native American Indian to the native land that the white people stole from them too. So what's up?
Now this is from the SPLC, and I'm going to admit I feel like the SPLC is biased. They, use unfair tactics and expressing their politics or political points of view. I don't think everything they report on is accurate. And I'll give you one example: the Proud Boys. Now the Proud Boys, they say, are white supremacists. They document them as a hate group in Hawaii, right? I mean, there may be 5 or 10 in the whole state, first of all. But if you look at some of the Proud Boy founders, if you look at people like Tiny, right, the big Samoan dude, and you look at some of the other Hawaiians, that are, natively Kanaka, Kanaka Maoli, you look at a lot of the black Proud Boys, there's a ton of them. They even have gay Proud Boys, right? Proud Boys is not a hate group, so I would, shy away from that. But the reason why I'm referring to the SPLC is because of their bias. What seems like biased against white people. So this goes against the grain when they're reporting that Hawaii is suffering from racial prejudice. Now, this goes on to many examples, and I'm going to go through a few of them. I recommend that you look at the description, you click the link, and you follow this and read it. And I'll give you some other examples as well, such as Laird Hamilton, the famous surfer that was born and raised in Kauai. He talks about the same thing. So they talk about things like 68-year-old dudes beat by Hawaiians and called racial epithets. Talk about Professor Huani K. Trask and her sister Milani Trask. I think they're twins, but they're both highly involved in the sovereignty movement. They use often racially motivated language, talking about how they reject any foreigner buying land in Hawaii. Not as if though Hawaiians don't go buy land in every other country, especially the United States. But they're against it here in Hawaii. They talk about how they don't want Japanese people to buy land here. They don't want Caucasian people or American people to buy land here. Very racial, very influential. Huani is a professor. I believe she teaches at UH. And then Milani is an advisor in many government agencies and many government consulting groups. So they have a lot of, say here, a lot of clout in Hawaii, and they're very racist. I don't think I've heard many more racist tirades than what these people go off on an intellectual level, let's say. And you can look it up. They've been on all kinds of talk shows in the 90s and so on. You can listen to their racial epithets and tirades and just the language they use. It's pretty racist. Now, when they say the N-word, right? Like the last videos that I showed you, that these local people were, not all of them, I've got to mention a lot of good Hawaiian people, but a lot of these people, at least towards this cult group, were using the N-word, on and on and on, the N-word this, N-word that, to describe these people and to speak to them. Very disrespectful. And this isn't unique, because they use the word haole, even though they say the word haole means without breath or foreigner. It's just like the N-word. The N-word derives from the country Niger, right? But when Americans use it, or Hawaiians especially, use the N-word, they're not describing the country Niger, they're describing a racial slur to hurt somebody. And it's the same way with haole. Haole might have started out meaning something else, but now they use it as a racial slur. So the last day of school has long been officially designated as Kill Haole Day, with white students singled out for harassment and violence. Haole, pronounced haole, is slang for foreigner, usually white, and sometimes used as a racial slur. Often used as a racial slur, mind you. Now, I've used the word haole in a non-racial way just to describe foreigners, and I'm sure a lot of Hawaiians will, native or otherwise. But it is rooted in racial context in modern history. A non-native Hawaiian student who challenged the Hawaiian preference admission policy at a wealthy private school received $7 million settlement this year. This was a guy who was accepted into Kamehameha schools. He has a Hawaiian name. He was born here, so he got a cultural name from locally. So they figured he was a Hawaiian dude. So they accepted his application, and then when he got to school, they realized that he's a white dude, and they kicked him out. So they violated the 14th Amendment, and instead of disputing it in court, they just settled with the guy and gave him $7 million. But they constantly, Kamehameha Schools is a very racist school. It has racist policies. It only caters to Native Hawaiians, indigenous, or I guess they can't be really called indigenous because Kanaka Maoli come from Tahiti. They didn't come from Hawaii. But Native Hawaiians or ethnically Hawaiian people, that's who they cater to. They currently have no white students, period. End of story. That's a fact. So 12-year-old white girl new to Hawaii from New York needed 12 surgical staples to close a gash in her head incurred when she was beaten in 2007 by a Native Hawaiian girl who called her a effing haole. A vocal segment of Native Hawaiians is pushing for independence to end the so-called prolonged occupation by the United States and governance by Native Hawaiians. Demonstrators shouted racial epithets at whites, disrupted a statehood celebration in 2006. And then they go on, they give it a little bit of an excuse, but then here they go. Tina Moore has lived in Hawaii for 25 years. She has Native Hawaiian friends, but in the 2003 to 2004 school year, her twin blonde-haired daughters, aged 11 at the time, began getting harassed by Native Hawaiian kids at their school on the Big Island. Our daughters would come home with bruises and cuts, she tells the intelligence reporter. One of the girls was assaulted twice in the same day. In one scuffle, she had her head slammed into a wall, and her attacker continued to threaten her daughter. Her daughter suffered a dislocated jaw and had headaches for 5 weeks, Moore said. The torment continued in the summer between 5th and 6th grades. Anyway, so she filed a complaint with the Civil Rights Division of the U.S. Department of Education in 2004. It was only recently, in December 31st, 2008, that the division finally released its report. The report concluded that there was substantial evidence that students experienced racially and sexually derogatory name-calling nearly on a daily basis on school buses, at school bus stops, in school hallways and other areas of the school that Moore's children attended. I mean, this is, you know, reviewed, studied from a credible education administration agency for the government. This isn't just, you know, locals saying this. This is, you know, research. So epithets included the names such as effing Howley, Howley C-U-N-T, Howley whore, so on and so forth. There's a ton more. Racial legacies. Ken Conklin, the way they treated him, threatening his life, calling him all sorts of racial epithets. Look up Dr. Ken Conklin. Right, this guy knows the Hawaiian language, has taught Hawaiian studies at University of Hawaii, you know, has a master's in history and I think he had a doctorate in math. And I mean, he's an educator. He's a peaceful man, an educator. But the way they went after him was terrible. And let's see, a hateful place. You'll see tons of examples. Just go to this. This is in the links in the description. And this is from a group that's not usually sympathetic to white violence, to, you know, violence against white people. This is very odd for them. It goes against the grain, which is why I talk about it. So I'll play you a little bit of Laird Hamilton as well.
Take me back to early days here in Hawaii. How much were you bullied?
Well, it started, I think, in the first day of school. I think the first day of school, I got in an altercation with a giant Hawaiian kid, and he was the other biggest kid in the class, and you know, that was the beginning. Was like kindergarten. It started in kindergarten, and then just worked its way on through middle school, or, you know, all the way to high school, until eventually I think I just got to the point where I got tired of it and thought maybe I shouldn't be at this school.